My name is Gianna, and my husband Hassan is an architect, or more accurately, a designer. While I don't completely understand the complexities of his work, he holds a first-class architect's license and mainly focuses on designing house and building plans. We've been married for 6 years and are fortunate to have 2 daughters, ages 4 and 2, our family of 4 lives. Happily together, we used to live in an apartment, but as our daughters grew, it started feeling cramped. So we decided to buy a second-hand single-family home. Although it wasn't very old, it needed some upgrades. That's when Hassan decided to take on the task himself. His father, my father-in-law, shares a passion for DIY projects. Though he's not a certified architect, he frequently builds furniture like tables and chairs at his home, and even made a bookshelf for our daughters. His craftsmanship is impressive, so much so that I believe he could sell his work. Thus, Hassan and his father teamed up to improve our new house. It wasn't exactly a renovation, but they began painting and tearing down walls to combine 2 small rooms into one large space. They've been working on it every weekend for almost 6 months doing it. Themselves has been more affordable and allows us to personalise the house. For now, our family has been living on the first floor since they've focused mainly on remodelling the living area. Initially, I was sceptical about handling the renovation ourselves, but watching Hassan and his father work, I've been amazed at how much our house has transformed. Both my daughters and I have grown excited as the house takes shape. However, there's been one persistent issue over the past 6 months. My mother-in-law, since my father-in-law started helping with the renovations, my mother-in-law's behaviour toward me has become increasingly hostile. She often calls to make biting comments such as accusing me of being irresponsible for having my father-in-law help with the housework and implying I'm lazy because I'm not currently working. She suggests that I'm burning Hassan and that he's doing everything himself. Even on his days off, I believe this stems from jealousy. She seems upset that we're enjoying ourselves, without her involvement, at one point. I even tried to invite her over for coffee, hoping to smooth things over. "Would you like to come over for coffee, mother-in-law?" I asked. But she rejected the offer, sarcastically replying, "Who would drink coffee with a lazy daughter-in-law like you?" I don't see myself as lazy. The reason I'm not working is because I'm raising our young daughters, Hassan, and I agreed that I would return to work once our eldest starts elementary school. Despite my attempts to explain this, my mother-in-law refuses to listen and instead criticises me for making Hassan do all the work. Eventually, I grew tired of defending myself and just let her words slide off. To be honest, I don't think she ever liked me from the moment I first visited Hassan's house before our marriage. She was polite as long as he was around, but once he left the room, she became openly critical. Hassan picked such an incredible girl. "Are you joking?" she said disdainfully. "If it were me, I could find a much better match for him." At that point, I wondered if I should call off the marriage, but I loved Hassan deeply and wanted to be happy with him, so I decided to move forward. I never told him about what his mother had said. I was nervous because we hadn't discussed living together before marriage, and I thought I could just avoid getting too involved with his family. However, things didn't improve after our wedding. She didn't speak a word to me during the ceremony, and it was the same whenever I visited for family gatherings. If Hassan wasn't around, she ignored me completely. Even worse, she began to treat my daughters coldly. I was relieved when my father-in-law stepped in to help with the house remodel, because it meant I didn't have to visit her. Before the renovations began, my mother-in-law's behaviour was unbearable back when we lived in the apartment, and I was struggling with childcare, especially with our youngest. She would visit unannounced while Hassan was at work. She would barge in without asking and demand things like coffee. Even if I was busy with the baby, she didn't care. If anything wasn't centred around her, she'd complain one time after I reluctantly made her coffee while my daughter was crying in the crib. She criticised me for not disciplining my baby. She also scolded me for a dusty bookshelf and wrinkled laundry, claiming I wasn't capable of anything. "Hassan deserves someone better than you," she said before leaving, without even drinking the coffee. That incident was the last straw, and I couldn't hold on my frustration anymore. I considered talking to Hassan about it many times, but he was always working late, and I didn't want to upset him. So I kept quiet in the early days of our marriage. We didn't see her often, and sometimes I would pretend I wasn't home. When she called, things started changing about 6 months ago when she got a smartphone. Now, when I don't answer her calls, she accuses me of deliberately ignoring her. She even brings my mother into the conversation saying, "You're ignoring me, aren't you?" It involves your mother too. She sends relentless messages making it difficult to avoid her. So I started reluctantly picking up on weekends thinking, I'll just endure it. But no matter how I respond, she's never satisfied what's with the attitude. Are you even reflecting on what I said? I wouldn't mind if you got a divorce, you know. She snapped recently lately. She's been fixated on the fact that I'm not working and only caring for the children. You're just indulging yourself making a mess, and that's why you're gaining weight, she said mockingly. It's true that I gained weight after my second pregnancy due to severe morning sickness, but her comments still sting. I managed to keep my weight within the recommended range, and over time, my body shape has been returning to normal since giving birth. However, for my mother-in-law, it seems that belittling me is the only way she can cope with her own stress every time we meet. She insults me, calling me names like pig and worries. She even started saying these things over the phone recently. It seems that the neighbours are gossiping about me too, claiming I'm not a good daughter-in-law. Whenever I visit my in-laws' house and interact with the neighbours, they give me strange looks and whisper things like, "You really need to take better care of your mother-in-law." It's gotten to the point where they directly say these things to me. I really want to get along with my mother-in-law, but it's her behaviour that makes it impossible. However, I can't explain that to the neighbours who don't know what's been going on. So I just smile and try to brush it off one weekend. My father-in-law came over and Hassan and I were working on some renovations together. That morning, my father-in-law handed me pasta that my mother-in-law had made, explaining that it was something H likes and that she occasionally brings it over, thinking it was time for a break. I started making coffee for my husband and father-in-law, but as usual, the phone rang. "Hello," I answered in my usual low voice. "You picked up quickly, just sitting around waiting for a call." Again, my mother-in-law's loud voice blasted through the phone. I instinctively moved the phone away from my ear. I was about to serve coffee when I tried to explain. "You're just making excuses because I called you. You always try to make yourself look innocent," she accused as though I were the problem. I didn't want to escalate things, so I put the phone on speaker and continued preparing the coffee without responding. She sighed dramatically and began again. "Anyway, did you get the pasta from your father-in-law? Did you make sure he ate it?" she demanded. "I got it from my father-in-law, but Hen hasn't eaten yet," I replied. "Why not?" "Did you eat it all by yourself?" She accused as if I would do that, I thought, but I simply replied, "He hasn't eaten it yet." "Well, why hasn't he eaten it? Did you stop him?" She continued. "He said he'd eat it later, so I put it in the fridge. I didn't stop him, so don't worry." I explained. She sighed again. "You're really good at irritating people," she said, and I was left confused. What did I do to irritate her? If anyone's getting irritated for no reason, it's her from the start. I never liked you. You claim to be with Hen, but your attitude is so unappealing, she continued. And what about the kids? You gave birth to 2 daughters and neither of them is a boy. You should have at least given birth to a son. "You worthless woman," she said at that moment. Something inside me broke. "Stop it. You can say whatever you want about me, but don't speak badly of my daughters," I said, my voice shaking. I had never spoken to her like that before, but I couldn't take it anymore, hearing her insults about my precious daughters, who are the children of the man I love, was too much. "What's with that attitude? It's your fault for not giving birth to a son," she continued. "That was it," I snapped back. "What's wrong with having daughters? My 2 girls are treasures to me, and my husband They should be precious grandchildren to you too. How can you say such things? I was angry, my frustration spilling over in a way I rarely let it. There was silence on the other end, but I couldn't hold back any longer. Even before we moved here, you just show up at our house, complain, and leave. You talked behind my back to the neighbours too, didn't you? Do you even understand how much I've struggled? The patience I had held for so long suddenly broke, and tears streamed down my face. My mother-in-law, seeing my tears, took advantage of the moment. Why are you crying? This is embarrassing. I've only tried to raise you as a daughter-in-law if you can't handle this. Just divorce Hassan, you can be replaced by a cow or a horse, she said at that moment. I realised that, despite everything I said, my true feelings hadn't been conveyed, and tears started flowing uncontrollably. My mother-in-law then said, "Do you think crying like this will make everything okay? Oh, I can't stand it." Just then, Hunk's father spoke up. "What was that?" Just now, I turned and saw my father-in-law and husband standing there with serious expressions. My father-in-law asked, "Was that my wife on the phone? Were you talking to her?" Maybe hearing my father-in-law's voice. My mother-in-law became flustered. "Oh, it's you. How long have you been listening?" she stammered. "Since the beginning, I heard everything," my father-in-law replied as he reached for my phone. He then turned to my phone, which was on speaker, and said, "What a disgrace. This is embarrassing. Get here right now and apologise to GI," he shouted angrily. I could hear my mother-in-law s faintly, but Hassan continued without hesitation. "Mum, have you been treating GI like this? That's terrible. I'm really disappointed. We make decisions together. You don't have the right to interfere. This is not okay." My mother-in-law, probably shocked, suddenly started apologising. "I'm sorry, Gianna. I won't say anything like that again. Please forgive me," she begged, but my father-in-law wasn't ready to accept such an apology. "I told you to apologise in person." He insisted just then. My eldest daughter came out from the back room. "Is Grandma coming?" "I don't want her to come," she said, making it clear to all of us. "Grandma is mean to me and Lily. She says bad things to Mommy too." "I don't want to see her," she said. Hassan then told her, "You're right, who would want to see her?" "Don't worry, we won't let Grandma come anymore, and we won't let her be mean to Mommy either." He gently patted our daughter's head. "Dad, promise you'll protect Mommy, okay?" As she hugged me, I felt an overwhelming sense of love. Finally, my mother-in-law said, "I'm truly sorry. I won't say anything again. Please forgive me." And with that, she hung up the phone. Since that day, I haven't received any more calls from my mother-in-law. My father-in-law told me if anything happens, just let me know. It seemed like my mother-in-law had been thoroughly scolded by him as she became quiet at home like a statue. She stopped gossiping to the neighbours and retracted everything she'd said. Thanks to my father-in-law and husband, our house was finally renovated and we had a spacious, functional home. Without the constant phone calls from my mother-in-law, I was able to focus on myself and enjoy more peaceful days. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay stunned.